Industry 4.0 has paved the way for digital disruption, innovation, and transformation to happen. Modern advancement in technology has changed the way we do business. The changing demands in the industries mean that employers are seeking business professionals with strong digital knowledge, skills, and mindset. As one of the prominent universities for business and technology education, RMIT actively responds to this industry need, and our Center of Digital Excellence is leading the way in sharing RMIT's expertise in Industry 4.0 with our students. The business innovation programs of RMIT University Vietnam are designed to respond to digital disruptions present across all industries. These programs will set you apart from the rest. Logistics and Supply Chain Management program provides you with the courses that lay the foundation for your professional career in this field. The Digital Business program prepares you to be life and work ready in this digital age. We have partnered with leading digital companies for you to develop the right digital skills, expertise, and mindset. Bachelor of Digital Marketing offers an excellent program that trains students to conduct market research, engage in social media and mobile marketing, implement display and search advertising, web design and search engine optimization, web analytics, and a lot more. The Master of Global Trade program helps global trade leaders who excel in academic and professional life, contributing to their companies and communities, leading to a sustainable, prosperous society. We focus trade leadership courses developed by employers for employers in partnership with the Henrik Foundation. You will be trained by experienced educators and industry practitioners in a conducive and innovative learning environment. At the same time, you will have a chance to work side by side with leading industry professionals in different courses. You will belong to an international community of excellent professionals and leaders who are always ready for life and work. All of these are yours for the taking. Imagine the future. Imagine your future with us. Imagine the endless possibilities with us. Your future is bright.
Innovation starts with me.
I make innovation happen.
The future is now.
Now is the time that I make a choice.
RMIT is my university of choice.
Come and join the Business Innovation Department.
Be one of us.
The future is now.
The future is now.
Good morning, everyone. So welcome to the first business talk of 2021 in the School of Business and Management. Today, our team from the Department of Business Innovation will present a talk on disrupting the supply chain with blockchain, or one of the latest digital innovations, and we look at from the perspective of values added to the supply chain. First, I would like to introduce Deputy Dean Professor Robert McClelland, who will present our speaker today. And then, I'll pass first to Professor Robert, please.
Thank you, Dr. Hip. Welcome, everybody. As Dr. Hip outlined, this is our #1 business talk for 2021. It's concerned with disrupting supply chains with blockchain, and it's with the perspective of value added. So today is the first in our series. Last year we had a series of 6 talks, and hopefully we'll have as many this year. And we're going to be welcoming 3 speakers today, the first of which is Dr. Hip, and I'll go back to that in a moment. But secondly, we've got Mr. George Nguyen, and thirdly, we've got Mr. Son Nguyen. And so I'll just briefly outline some of their profile. Starting with Mr. George Nguyen, he's the country manager for 2359 Media, and he's an experienced executive director. That's across industries, and currently he consults for blockchain companies who want to go global with safe, legal, and good strategies. He's a serial entrepreneur, and he's currently mentoring a number of startups in Vietnam. And George has been managing 2359, 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, Google Developers Group, and he's open for any investment or business invitation. So welcome to George later. The third speaker we have today is Mr. Son Nguyen. He's the chairman of Media Ventures Vietnam, this is the MVV group, and he's a serial entrepreneur. He's a lecturer, he's an author, and he's a communications expert. Son actively invests in communications, education, healthcare, and technology. In total, Son founded or co-founded 20 businesses so far. He also serves as an advisor to the Regional Board of Advisors of the Asia Pacific Media Alliance for Social Awareness. And it's a media and advertising industry-led initiative for building the awareness on social development issues and achieving behavior change. And as a mentor for Endeavour, the global high-impact entrepreneurship movement is one of his feathers in his cap also. So there are two of our three speakers for today. But the first speaker is our own Dr. 𝗵𝗴 from the School of Business and Management. And 𝗵 is a senior lecturer. He's also a research cluster lead for logistics and supply chain management. And 𝗵 today is going to talk about what is blockchain and how can it disrupt our current supply chains. So over to you, Dr. 𝗵𝗴. Welcome, and you begin the session.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Bob. Yeah. So first, I will present our first topic today. Chang, can you move to the next slide? Right, my topic is about what is blockchains and how it can disrupt the supply chains. Many of us have heard about Bitcoins, right? And so today we look at a much deeper and underlying technology behind the very famous cryptocurrencies with the Bitcoin. So let's move to the next slide. And I will go to first look at very fundamentals, how blockchain works, so that you can appreciate what is the technology and what it can bring to many other industries. And I give you examples on how blockchain can be deployed and used in multiple industries, such as agriculture, education, entertainment. And at the end, we'll summarize what would be the key values that blockchain can bring to the supply chain. Next. So when we look at blockchains, we probably very famous application of blockchain with the Bitcoins, which were founded or actually developed first in 2008 by a group of authors like Satoshi Nakamoto, right? And it's very famous because it came out to pretty much like want to replace traditional currency, which caused a lot of high cost of transactions, slows, a lack of transparencies in the transactions. So blockchain came out with kind of an alternative, a very disrupted method to facilitate the transaction over the borders from buyer and sellers without centralizing a central institution like a bank, right? So how in such a world that have trust, actually people don't trust each other, and then they can conduct business together in a trustworthy environment. So this is in the initial kind of application of blockchain, and it's trying to actually provide such a transaction without a central institution, and it's self-trusted, it's self-protected, and it still ensure everyone will not be disadvantaged from that transactions. So this is a very initial idea of the blockchains. Next, please. And just like the internet or any technology, blockchain also develop all the time. So back we have in the 2008, 2009, which is the first Bitcoin were introduced. It's called blockchain 1.0. Bitcoin or the blockchain used for Bitcoin is a bit outdated. It's slow, right? It's very heavy, very resource intensive. And in terms of the speed, you can see it can handle only about 4 to 6 transactions per second, which is very slow. And if anyone into doing that Bitcoin minings, you will see how much power and resources that needed to produce this currency. And then we got more later blockchains or cryptocurrency based on that. We call Ethereum, which is a networks that facilitate also this kind of cryptocurrencies, but it has added functions such as smart contract. It's lighter, it's smarter in a way that it processes transaction, and the speed also a little bit faster, not as super fast, but it's faster. And then in 2018, EOS is another, it's a startups, and they develop EOS platforms with added more feature into the blockchain or cryptocurrency transaction. It's a lot faster, it's smarter, it's also more customizable, and you can see it can handle a lot more transaction per second. So that would overcome some of the limitation in previous blockchain generations. Next, please. When we come to the blockchain, there's a lot of terminology that if you really want to know about, you need to be a bit familiar with. For example, distributed ledger with nodes and blocks, hashes, which will come into more details shortly. We look at public key, private key, smart contract, then proof of works, proof of stake. These are the key kind of functions that need to perform to actually operate a blockchain. And I will go into detail some of these key terms. Next, please. So what is blockchains? At the overview, you can see that we move from a centralized ledger to a distributed ledger. And ledger is pretty much like an accounting statements, an accounting records. So traditionally on the banks, is act as a clearinghouse, as a centralization that every transaction must go through them to process and approve. In a distributed ledger, everyone's actually part of that clearinghouse or centralization. Everyone contribute to that operation, to that validities and testings of the blockchain networks. And as you part of the nodes, are part of the distributed ledger, you act as an active member in that process. And by having that consensus among all of the participants, it actually protect the information itself. Yeah. Okay, let's go next, please. So here you can see that each node is actually a participant, and every node will have the entire information about a blockchain. So, for example, when we look at blockchain Bitcoins, right? So once you join into that Bitcoin networks and become a part of that networks, you have to download every information that's available from Bitcoins from the start to pretty much to the time that you actually participate. So you can imagine that the size of this blockchain can be big because it contains in the last like 20 years of 2009. So yeah, more than 12 years, right? You can see how much information that have contained. And as the latest number, by 2020, we have about 200 gigabytes of data if for Bitcoin networks that everyone join in have to get that information. Okay, next, please. So as the name referred to, you see it's blockchain. So it's a chain of block. So what is a block? A block simply, it's just a record. It contains information inside, and that information mainly composed of three components. We call data, hash, and the hash of the previous block. Right. So that's make up a block of data. And let's look at the next one. What is data in that blocks of a blockchain? Next, please. So first, data. Data in a block simply just any information that blockchain contains about. So for a cryptocurrency like Bitcoins, it can be information about the sender, the receiver, and the amount of coins that transacted, that sell between the two participants. For a blockchain in hospital or education, the data is about the name of the patient, the name of the information, private information, contact numbers, anything that blockchain, that block contain information that relevant to the participants of that blockchains. Next, please. So how about the hash? So the information can be stored in that block, but the information have to be verified, have to be accurate, have to be validated, just to make sure that it is not modified in an unauthorized way. So a hash is a numeric values. It have a fixed length for any data. So you can have a different inputs, but the output is always have the fixed length of a long characters, right? Because of that, different input produce different output. Only have the same input will produce the same hash values. So by having that uniqueness in the output, then you can ensure that the information, whether it have not been tampered with, it have not modified, or it have came from an authorized persons, if it have the same hash values. And as the block, the records that added into a blocks created, the hash values will be created. So what the hash look like? So I give here the example of this here using a hash function called 𝗗𝗶𝗀𝗶𝗃, and the input is a word blockchain. And by running this algorithm, this hash function, it produces, you can see that that very long list of the hash values. The next example, you can see that the same word blockchain, what I change is the letter B. From lowercase, I change to uppercase. And then you can see it completely produce a completely different hash values, right? And the good thing about the hash values is you cannot predict, or you cannot go reverse engineer by looking at the output with the hash values and work out what is the input. So you from the input you can produce the output, but from the output you cannot guess what is the input because of the randomness in the function. And 𝗗𝗶𝗀𝗃𝗽𝗃 is the same hash function used in blockchain to produce all of that hash values in that blockchain activities. Okay, next please. Right. So because of the nature of the hash value, it's unique for every input. So by ensuring the data have not been tampered with, simply you just check the hash values. So if the hash values have produced a value, if anyone modify the data in the blocks, it will also change the hash values, and then people would know that this content is no longer in its original format. And this is the key function and feature of blockchain to ensure the integrities of the whole blockchains. Next, please. So how does it work to protect before that, we look at now. So we now understand a block. A block have data, and it's also produce a hash values from the data, right? But how the block actually connect with each other? So it connect by linking the hash from one block to the other. For example, you see at the block 1, we did the very first blocks. It have a information inside called data, and then it produce a hash value. And because it doesn't go to any previous block, so we call it generic block. And the previous hash would be just 0 because it's no previous block. When we go to block number 2, right? You add the entry, the data into the blocks, then you insert the hash values of block number 1 into block number 2. Right, so we bring that hash value into it, and then it produces a new hash with the data in block number 2 plus the hash of block number 1. And then when we go to block number 3, it also have its own data plus the hash values of block number 2, and then it produces a new hash. So by having the previous hash put inside a new blocks, you can always link it back to the previous one. And that's how we could create a chain of block, and that the name came from blockchains, right? And these chains are connected, are validated with each other. Any broken in the chain, it will be detected. Let's look at the next slide. So here, if you look at it in block number 2, if someone, a hacker, can go in and pretty much modify the information, whether changing the buyer, from someone else to myself. If I change the buyer, immediately the hash value will change, right? And because the hash value will change, that means the block number 3, when it do the validation, it refer back to number 2. And because number 2 now doesn't actually have the same hash value before, because it have been, the information have been changed, then block number 3 would not accept the information in block number 2. And because of the consensus that happened in the blockchain, people would vote out block number 2, and then that record could be discarded, and then the original block have to be kept and cannot be in. So a new block or new information cannot be inserted into a validated block. And this is the main key benefit of blockchain to ensure integrities and foolproof, hacking proof that very difficult to break, and that will protect the integrities of the informations. Next, please. Another very key information in blockchains is that everyone participate in this blockchain need to have some identity. Just like when you go to the bank, you have to present some identity card with photos, so it can verify you are who you are. But when you doing this transaction online in a digital world, you don't know who they are, right? So we use a technology called public key cryptographies. That means everyone participate would have a pair of key. We call private keys and public keys. And by having the private keys and public key work together, you can create some identity called digital signature. And having this information, you can ensure that you send the money to the right persons, or you sell whatever information. So this is very also significant importance in the blockchain, so that the transactions, financial transactions especially, can be ensured. Yeah, next please. So quickly here you can see that how transaction can happen. Alice will say sell a Bitcoin to Bob, and having Alice have private key, it encrypt its message plus the Bitcoins, it add it to the blockchains. The blockchain will then validate it, and only Bob with a private key can open the message that's sent by Alice. If anyone else get that message, they cannot open the message to get the information about the Bitcoin inside, because the message have been encrypted with Bob public key, and that only Bob private key can open that private message. So this ensure, even in the digital world, that we can send the information to the right persons. Next, please. So this is just an overview. Again, I wrap up this, right? That's how the process of blockchain happens. It goes through a number of steps so that the transaction can be ensured, can be verified, and completed. Next, please. Okay, so now quickly I overview of some of the application of blockchains in various industry. In agriculture, for example, using blockchain to ensure that information can be generated, can be validated, and can be protected. Then information about the sources of the materials, the transaction status, transport status, warehouse status, can be owned, protected, can be owned, captured, and shared to the relevant user without anyone to actually verify it, because the whole network actually verify themselves, and such information can be easily verified very quickly at a low cost. Yes, next. How about in game and entertainment, right? So a lot of people have played games, and you know that you buy toys, you buy icons and stuff like that on games. But with using blockchain, that these things can be digitalized, it can be verified, and no one actually can whether affect the items, and also protection will be a lot faster, a lot better. Even the game producer still cannot interfere with this process, unlike in traditional game that everything can be changed, can be by the game manufacturer or game producer. Okay, next please. All right, I'm not sure if you are aware of this, a very latest new technology called non-fungible tokens. Very quickly, it's just a way that provide an authenticity to a digital asset. So even those, you can see this image here, right? Recently sold for $69 million, and everyone can copy this image from the internet, right? Why it costs so much? But what different is that in this image, it have the public keys information of the author. And once you have that information, you insert into and using the hash values, that hash values will always be unique to this author, to this photo. So even you copy that photos, but without the proper private keys, you cannot claim this is your photo, and only that author can verify that information. It creates a sense of uniqueness, authenticities, and that really changed the game now in digital copyright. Next, please. Blockchain in healthcare, as you know, that because information can be protected, can be shared, can be easily also checked by only authorized people. So blockchain can really facilitate information sharing in healthcare industry and make the doctor and patient access information much easier than before, right? Next, please. Education. So next, I would quickly give you some example. Next, please. All right, so in education, as you know, we can do, people normally have academic transcripts and degrees and informations. It's very difficult to verify the authenticities of the degrees. And having blockchain that store all information about academics, about transcripts, then again, you can easily access and verify information that available on the blockchain. It can easily detect any fraudulent transaction, blah, blah, blah. And that's another application in education. Yes. We're nearly there. Next, please. So let me just wrap up. Yeah. So we haven't look at the blockchain, look at the fundamental of how blockchain works. You know that it provides a sense of transparency, visibilities. It provides a sense of securities because it has been protected by the networks without any central institutions. So it provides very transparencies than before. It can also disintermediate the supply chain. So that means instead of going through layers of middle intermediaries, processor, now it can go direct from buyer to seller, and that really streamline and reduce the complexity in the supply chain, leading to cost saving, times, quickly response and access in the supply chains. And that, next please. That's the end of my presentation about the blockchains and some of its application in various industries, and really appreciate your input after the session. All right, so next I would like to pass to Mr. George, who will present about supply chain in real estate and how it changed the games. George, please.
Hello, everyone. So this is George. So I'm very glad to be here today with you guys to share a little bit about how blockchain gonna change the real estate game, right? Next, please. So the agenda today will be, I'm gonna go through the blockchain meaning, first definition, distributed ledgers. I think I'm gonna go quickly through the 3 points because Dr. 𝗕𝗵 already went through this. So I'm going to focus more on the real estate case, how we're going to apply blockchain, and what are the kind of challenges in the real estate industry today. Next, please. Right. So again, I'm going to go through this quickly, but I want to emphasize again, blockchain have many meaning, right? So pretty much like you got the phone, the idea of network, whatever. So it's still different from the phone itself. And from the right side, you got blockchain. You got a lot of application on blockchain like Bitcoin or the coin offering. So it's still the cryptocurrency, and they are also different from blockchain from the meaning itself. Next. Right. So what is blockchain, right? Like Dr. 𝗕𝗵 already mentioned. So blockchain is a kind of technology that permits transactions to be gathered, blocked, and it's recorded. And it's recorded in the distributed ledger. That means everybody in the blockchain network will have all the records of the transactions happen in the network as well. And again, those kind of blocks will be decoded. So it's really difficult for somebody to hack and to get control of the network. And in theory, it is impossible to hack into the blockchain network unless you got the power of like more than 51% of the network's control. And if you look at the Bitcoin network now, right? So the 51%, ownership of network is like the huge money, and in theory you cannot control that. Next. Right. So again, different between centralized ledger and distributed ledger. So centralized ledger, you all go to one point, for example, the banks. But for distributed ledgers, you are in the circle in the network yourself. And sometimes we refer that into the terminology called peer-to-peer. Okay, you make the request to the other peer, approved by the network, and the transaction will happen peer-to-peer, and you don't need to go to the intermediary like a bank. Okay. Next. So how my distributed network works. So again, I'm gonna go through this quickly because Dr. Hip already mentioned. So for example, the first one, the user initiate the transaction, right? So in order to initiate that, you need a signature. And in this scenario, you need a digital signature. And this will be broadcast to all, the transaction will be broadcasted to all the nodes. And the third step will be the validation, okay? So it will pick particular node in order to validate whether the new node is validated or not. If it's validated, it will be added into the chain, right? And then in order to get the validation, there are many consensus protocol, which, we can talk about this later. If you make some kind of research about that, we got proof of work, proof of stake. So those kind of protocol, different protocol. So once the block reflecting the state, it will be added to the chain, and from that new nodes will be issued and then validated again and then added into the chain. Next, please. Okay, this already mentioned, so I'm gonna skip this slide. Right. So for this, I think it's again about cryptography, how it's gonna be encrypted, and you can look through that. You can see that the 5 features of that, right? So it can be used without central authority. So it's like peer-to-peer again. Yeah, it can create a value on access. It can be used to do the ownership of the access. For the ownership, I'm going to mention that into the real estate case where you can tokenize the land and then have the portion ownership of the land. Then it can be used to record the transfer the values. Again, it's about distributed ledger where all the transaction will be recorded into the chain. The last point is it can be used to allow owner of the asset to exercise certain rights associated with the ownership. Again, it's mapping your ownership with the assets, and you can have a number of permission and right to do with the ownership. Also, you see the little word now called proxy voting in blockchain, right? Smart contract is something really important features of the blockchain because it's allow you to do the rule of the game, where you can make decision based on your network and being allowed to vote to help you to make the decision on the crypto authority. Next, please. Okay. Now, Dr. Hifam already mentioned about smart contract. So now I'm going to focus on this more than the definition of blockchain. So what is the smart contract? Smart contract was born with Ethereum, and this is one of the most important features on the blockchain because when you do peer-to-peer transaction, there's no middleman, there's no intermediary, and you have to have the rule for yourself, and that rule is written down into something called smart contract. So smart contract is like the normal contract in our real life, but it's a programming. Okay, it is program. So first, It's a program that runs on a blockchain, right? So it's the collection of code. For example, this is the number of if and else. You know, if this happen, it's gonna go to this. Else goes to this. So it's do a lot of branching, conditional branching, right? And because it resides on the blockchain network, it will have specific address, right? When you look at the third column, they will have the balance itself because it's like a block. It's just a block, okay? It had the address, so it had the balance itself. So whenever you have, you know, let's say me and you, we do a deal and we say, okay, we put money together and we make decision. If this decision doesn't happen, then we refund the money. Otherwise, the money will be frozen into a particular account. So the thing happened is that we all send our money to a smart contract. So smart contract is just a node. So the money will go to that smart contract address, okay? And they have the balance there. And there will be a rule if and else there. If this happens, then the money will be sent to someone else. If it doesn't happen, then the money will send back to our wallet, our address. The second column, when you look at this, right, you will see the user account can they interact with the smart contract by, you know, send the money, the transaction, execute the function on the smart contract, and smart contract will define the rules, right? And this will be automated. The code will automate and force all the action to be happen then. Right. Next, please. So just a quick video. I think you will be more understandable of smart contract.
The only difference is that they are completely digital. In fact, a smart contract is actually a tiny computer program that is stored inside of a blockchain. Let's take a look at an example to understand how smart contracts work. You probably are familiar with Kickstarter, the large fundraising platform. Product teams can go to Kickstarter, create a project, set a funding goal, and start collecting money from others who believe in the idea. Kickstarter is essentially a third party that sits in between product teams and supporters. This means that both of them need to trust Kickstarter to handle their money correctly. If the project gets successfully funded, the project team expects Kickstarter to give them their money. On the other hand, supporters want their money to go to the project if it was funded, or to get a refund when it hasn't reached its goals. Both the product team and its supporters have to trust Kickstarter, but with smart contracts, we can build a similar system that doesn't require a third party like Kickstarter. So let's create a smart contract for this. We can program the smart contract so that it holds all the received funds until a certain goal is reached. The supporters of a project can now transfer their money to the smart contract. If the project gets fully funded, the contract automatically passes the money to the creator of the project. And if the project fails to meet these goals, then the money automatically goes back to the supporters. Pretty awesome, right? And because smart contracts are stored inside a blockchain, everything is completely distributed. With this technique, no one is in control of the money. But wait a minute, why should we trust a smart contract? Well, because smart contracts are stored on a blockchain, they inherit some interesting properties. They are immutable and they are distributed. Being immutable means that once a smart contract is created, it can never be changed again. So no one can go behind your back and tamper with the code of your contract. And being distributed means that the output of your contract is validated by everyone on the network. So a single person cannot force the contract to release the funds because other people on the network will spot this attempt and mark it as invalid. Tampering with smart contracts becomes almost impossible.
Right, next please.
Now,
okay, so let's talk a little bit about real estate and blockchain, okay? So these are the things, I think a lot of problems that real estate have at the moment. So for investment in a real estate, it's not open to everyone, okay? Because of the legal issue or because of the entry, because like it requires you a certain amount of money, and you cannot actually fund yourself, right? But if you do it in the group investment, then you need to trust the other, and then you need to have a different kind of rules to have the agreement with each other as well. And also, it's lack of transparency, especially real estate in Vietnam, right? You will see that's very complicated. Many departments in charge of the property, and you don't even know where to check it. Very high fees. That's about the entry, the money you put in to invest into real estate. Low liquidity. For example, if you have the you own property and you want to sell it, you have to sell the whole, right? And that's why the liquidity depends on that particular property. Or if you do a group investment, for example, 3 of us, put the money together, we buy a particular property, and if at a certain time I want to sell that property, I need to ask you guys for permission, or we all sell together. We cannot just like sell partially. High pricing commitments, low transaction speed, because once you sell the property, you need to go to particular certain procedure. It's quite complicated. So what are the benefits of blockchain in real estate? You can see it increase the transparency, right? It's efficient transaction, and it's increase the liquidity. So there are a lot of probable use cases of blockchain in real estate. It increase the liquidity, right? Better search process, which is not really significant. But transparency of the tile transfer is something that quite unique, right? Automated property of buy and sell, you don't need to, register for that, but it's automated by the smart contract. It prevents a different kind of fraud, right? So I'm gonna go in detail about those frauds, the tie and deed fraud, the wire email fraud, right? And also, like I mentioned before, you cannot, own the fractional investment of the property in the traditional market, right? But in blockchain, you can do that. And this also prevents the mortgage fraud. Next, please. Now, go a little bit deeper, okay? Let's say about tokenized ownership. For one land, I can just divide it into many fragments. For example, let's say I divide that into like 1,000 tokens, and then it depends on how many tokens you buy on that particular property, and you will own portion of this, right? So once you do that, and you do the transaction on the blockchain, the smart contract then will define the route. It will be automated, and you don't need to, have a lawyer in between. You don't need to have the broker in between, right? It's about peer-to-peer. So that's why it go to the first one. You can see that decentralizing multi-listing service. So that is the exchange. Okay, the listing exchange you can do there, right? It preventing title fraud, right? So the history of the real estate, whether it's sell to A, sell to B, sell to C, it could be all recorded in the blockchain, and you cannot fake that. In the traditional market, right? You don't even know who that property been sold to many different people. Where do you check it? The only place you can check it is the Department of Natural Resources and Environment, right? It's really hard. The next one is the crowdfunding, right? Like I said before, in the traditional market, you can buy a land yourself. You cannot just, jump it into different smaller and do the crowdfunding on that particular property. The next one is preventing wire fraud, right? The wire fraud is the kind of fraud that a lot of people do the fake certificate, or they do the email and try to get the information and ask you to transfer money. So that's happened quite a lot in the other country. In Vietnam, it doesn't happen that much, but in other countries, it happens a lot. Property inspection transparency. Sometimes we buy a house, we would like to know how many times this one has been maintenance, any kind of bad things according to Asian culture. For example, this house used to have some bad cases like people committed suicide, whatever. You know, there's no way that you can check it. But with the blockchain, everything will be recorded in the blockchain, and you can just go through and look at it. It's all transparent. The next one is the mortgage fraud, right? In Vietnam, if you don't know the legal, you don't have the legal knowledge, and then you might buy the property that already, you know, in the bank, and then already mortgage the property in the bank. Many banks, you know, you have no ideas about that. But if it is recorded in the blockchain, then you will know exactly whether it's mortgage or not, or it can be mortgage but in the blockchain system, and you can look at this and check on the information. Yeah, next please. Right, so the kind of solution that come to the very general you know, challenges of the real estate market, but in Vietnam, it have some very unique and very significant challenges. For example, administrative procedure, legal document, very complicated, and you need some kind of third party legal to verify the status. Liquidity also, the way you govern the property, too many intermediate parties involved, for example, broker, notary, local authority, right? And also it's also challenging for foreigners to buy property in Vietnam or invest in a property in Vietnam. So there are many platforms have tried to solve that problem, and especially in Vietnam. Me, myself, we had a project to solve the problem as well. So we have a platform where we do the crowdfunding to invest into particular real estate, and we try to improve the liquidity because we have the exchange. So you can sell the portion of the property on the exchange. Next, please. So the project's called Mooncare. If you want to explore and try to learn more about this, then contact me later. I'm not going to mention in that section. Next. All right, so I think that is all for my presentation. And for the last slide, can you go next to the last slide? I really want to emphasize you to be very careful and differentiate, you know, carefully between blockchain and Bitcoin. It's not Bitcoin, okay? Most of the time people talk to me, I say, hey, this is the blockchain product, and people say, is that Bitcoin? Is that cryptocurrency? I say, no, blockchain is blockchain. So I want the biggest takeaway of my section will be blockchain is not Bitcoin. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you, George, yeah, and very for insightful into the not the application of blockchain in real estate, and actually George is actually building an app for that, and calling for investor very soon. So if anyone interested, please contact George for more opportunities. Next, I would like to pass to Mr. Sơn, who chairman of MVV Groups, and who will present about the future of edtech. Thank you, Sơn, please.
Okay, thank you. So can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, very clear, please.
Okay, great. So first of all, I would like to thank you, Dr. Hiệp and RMIT for inviting me here. So I'm gonna talk to you about the future of edtech, a little bit different from what Josh and Dr. Hiệp told you in the previous two sections. So why I want to talk about edtech? I think first I'm an investor, and like Robert mentioned, I invest in about 20 ventures, but actually I invest in 3 main areas. The first one is healthcare, the second one is marketing services, and the third one is edtech. Basically, we have mainly we focus on the adult learning, so not so much with K-12 or student. But as an investor, I'm very interested to couple of things. The first one is the size of the market. The second is the trend, and the third one is, of course, the scalability of the product that we offer. So I'm gonna talk to you about in about 20 minutes about the trend and how we investor view the futures of education and training. Next, please. So of course, as an investor, we look at the market and we look at the size of the market. You will see that in 2019, 2 years ago, the size of the whole global edu market is about 7,000 billion US dollar, and is estimated to 2024 is will reach 9,000 billion US dollar. So you see that the market size is huge, right? You will see that there's a lot of opportunities in the market for us as an investor and also for the executioner. Next, please. So, but for us, we focus more on educational technology, edtech. We focus more on the digital learning. You will see in my presentations BC and AC. BC mean before COVID, okay? Before COVID-19, and AC mean after COVID-19. So the digital learning market actually is not that huge compared to the global education market, but it is quite sizable. In 2019 is 160 billions, and before COVID-19 they estimated that up to 2035 the market will expand to 1,000 billion US dollar. Next, please. Right now we have 1.6 billion global students in online learning. So you will see that every 4 people have 1 person that use online learning. Next, please. Okay, so there's a big difference between before COVID-19 and after COVID-19. You will see that before COVID-19, when we look at the education market, usually people look as student, right? 18 to 20 years old, and they live in dorm, they attend classes, it's divided in semester, and they use lecture and tests. The time of studying is 8 to 5. It's just like people going to the office, and you have daily class, and the lecturing is quite classical in the context. But after COVID-19, actually people look more at the expanding of the natures of learning and training. You will see that for us, the learning is expand from what we call from green to great, right? Not just only 18 to 20 years old, but from 18 to 80 years old. And we're talking more about lifelong learning. So the norm of student are now quite different from the traditional student meaning. Then we focus also on the peer-to-peer learning. You maybe heard about 70-20-10 principle, right? So 10% from the traditional or even digital learning, 20% is peer-to-peer learning, and 70% is what we call experience learning. And with the educational technology, with the edtech, the class is quite diversified and quite broad. We actually have what we call continuing class. We have AI-enabled personalized learning. And actually, you can learn anywhere, anytime, anything. And we also capture what we call invisible learning. So the way that you read, the way that you listen, the way that you consume media can be put into learning as well. And soon you will see that professors, lecturers may lose their job on the AI-enabled personality, or we call robot teaching. You know, I spent 20 years in teaching as well. I need to reconsider myself whether I need to be retired or replaced by AI-enabled personality. But I can talk about it later. Next. Okay, so you in our previous slide, you will see that they predict that the market is in 2019 is 160 billions, but in 2035 it will be 1 billion. But after COVID-19, the process is actually fastened and quickened enough. So they predict that in 2027 that the market will reach 1,000 billions US dollar. So is shortened the time by half. In 8 years, you will see that the market is reach 1,000 billions US dollar. Next. Next, please. So that what we call back to the futures. And now I wanted to talk to you about the 10 trends in EdTech. Next, please. So the first one, and I think the most important one, is that the transition from the manufacturing economy to knowledge economy. As a student and as you know, staff of RMIT, especially people in Vietnam, you heard a lot about digital transformation, right? You know, in every ministries and every conference, people talk a lot about the digital transformation, and you know, they talk so much that sometimes I hate the term of digital transformation because it's been overused quite a lot. And but what really is digital transformation is actually a transition from what we know economy as manufacturing, going more to the knowledge economy. You will see that we transit from an economy that based on the physical access with the hierarchy management. You see that they divide it in managers and staff. They look at the book value and the gone deposit of the economy to a knowledge economy that value based by the potential of the human capital. We look at not just only the world is flat, but we see a lot of flat organization. You know, there will be very what we call the agile kind of structure, organizational structures, not waterfall, right? You will see the flat organization. And we don't have managers and staff. We actually have peers that we learn from each other. We form a project team and we achieve things together. And people will look more on the share of the futures, and they look at the revenue per head. They look at the ESOP that they can gain. So the knowledge economy is actually the futures of our economy in the next couple of years. Next, please. So the second trend is a digital revolution. When we're talking about the digital transition, we actually not that transformation or transition, but is we call it the revolution. And usually people will ask me why we call it revolution. And for us as an investor, the revolution happened when the technology is so cheap that everyone can have a piece of it, and then it's been create a mass effect. So you will see that there's a lot of things that now, whether we call social technology, is whether it's very cheap or even free of charge, right? So Zoom, for example, is one of the technology that usually I pay $10,000 for a Polycom service, which is far more worse than Zoom. But right now you will see that you Zoom actually is free of charge for some of the function, and many other things that will equip individual or small and medium-sized company that in technology sense they can compete with the giant or the big company. One individual using Zoom is actually can reach thousands of people. You will see that is also jeopardize or change the perception of us as a university or professor, for example. Next, please. And the first one is a finance, or I would say there's abundance and a vast of money available for the new product, new technology. You will see that a lot of money is out there available for the new ideas. That we call global Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley is not a technology center, but it's also a financial center that they can channel the finance. If you look as Grab, or if you look as Gojek, you will see that they can easily raise billions of dollars fuel into the potential of the business that they develop. For example, I invest in a company called Dr. Anywhere, and years ago we raised $27 million. So it's just only 3 years, but we can actually generate that much interest from financier. And I cannot reveal now, but end of this month we will make another round, and we will double that money that we can we call for the project. So if you have a new technology, if you have a new good idea, I believe that the money is not an issue. Next, please. Next, please. And the fourth tendency is IoT. You will see that there's a lot of things that connect with the Internet of Things. You see a lot of machines talking to each other, and it's also a very good enabler for the edtech. The fifth one is the change of the workplace. So you will see that a lot of companies, especially outside of Vietnam, now allow people that working from home, or forced to let people working from home. And because they work from home, there's a certain technology, certain skill that they need to obtain, and it's also create vast opportunities for the edtech companies. Next, please. The sixth one is the concept of the winner takes it all. It's meaning that you will see that in the market there will be no place for the mediocre player. You whether need to be the best or you will be a loser. With the internet, with the word of mouth that easily distributed, and with the loyalty of the client going very low now. Actually, you need to be very best to take on of the client available in the market. You see, you know, again, Grab is an example. Next, please. The seventh thing is people, because of the COVID-19, people realize that actually sustainability is a key to survival of the humankind. And actually, you may heard the concept of CSG. People talking about social responsibility, and we talk about the contemporary capitalism, but actually people need to look at on the way that they manufacture, trade, and profess, focus on the effect that we create to the society and the world and the globe as large. Next, please. Next, please. And the eighth is the power of data. We know that for on the company now is knowing your clients, knowing your customer is the key to success. With all the AI and deep learning, those who obtain the data, who can enrich the data, and who can use the data. People talking about data is a new oil, right? So you know, using the data is a key to success. Not just only big data. People talk a lot about big data, but for us, is small data is also important. The most important thing is how you use it. The way you use it is very important. Okay, next, please. And the ninth trend is, of course, subscribers. You will see that you know, I spent a lot of years in communication, and we in communication and marketing, we have a saying now that don't make people to be fan of your brand. You need to make them subscribers of your brand. So this is the economy of scale. More people using your services, the cheaper your product would be, and it's make you know, is attract more people to your network. So using subscription as a business model is you know, a majority of edtech company is focused on. Next, please. And the last one is what we call contemporary capitalism. A lot of people realize that that making profit is not enough, and they need to focus on human resource. They need to focus on purpose of the company and the sustainability. And for us, we work with a lot of private sector donors actually. Because we produce a lot of content and we rely on the CSR initiative of the private sector that provide free content, free training content in terms of gender equality. Okay, next, please. Next, please. Okay, I mentioned that. Okay, please. Okay, so we talk about 5 tech. We talk about 10 edtech tendency. Now we talk about 5 tech trend that affect education as well. Okay, please. So the first one is, of course, Zoom. Zoom is actually what we call the digital Zoom is actually affect a lot, like I mentioned. When we talk about Zoom, it's not just only Zoom. The way we use Team, we use Hangout, we use a lot of teleconferencing and video conferencing is actually offer vast opportunities for us to reach people of on level. Okay, next please. And the second is AI. Of course, the artificial intelligence we use a lot in training and analyzing the data that you have. In one of our product, you have the what we call the MVP Uni. Is actually we use a lot of AI and deep learning to screening the data of people learning habit, and using the AI we can recommend and we can personalize your training need. For example, if you go after you go for 20 or 25 courses, we actually can identify your gap, identify your learning habit, and by understanding you sometimes much better than yourself, we can actually offer you a way of learning that best suits you. Next, please. Okay, so the first one is AI and VR is also good for us. Next, please. And blockchain, I think I'm very fascinated to hear Mr. Hiệp and Dr. Hiệp and Josh talking about blockchain. For us, it's very important because you see that we, as one of the premium training content that offer over the internet, so we very much care about the industrial property. And using blockchain, we can actually secure that one thing. The second thing is it can actually change the way that we can create and distribute the training content. Imagine that everyone that put effort in creating content is actually can, when we distribute, when we sell the content, is actually can go back to them. A piece of that will go back to everyone who helped to create that content. So the future of it is really fascinating. Next, please. And of course, 5G. 5G, and if Elon Musk success in providing with all that satellites, you will see that we can, what we have in my dream is what we call bring Harvard to Ha Giang, right? Bring Harvard to Ha Giang. We can, with the accessibility of the 5G, you can use a lot of technology that I mentioned before, AI, VR, in the real-time teaching and learning. Okay, so what would be my wrap up for my sharing with you? I think the first one is the world is changed and is changed rapidly. The education and the training is actually facing a revolution, and there's a lot of problem that we actually facing now in terms of the traditional educational model. When you look at the way you learn and the way you teach, is actually you will see that in 2 or 3 years time, it will change dramatically, and you need to be prepared for that change. You will see a revolution in the way of people learning and teaching. So I hope that you will gain enough skill and knowledge to face with these challenges and opportunities. Again, thank you, RMIT and Dr. Hiệp for inviting me here. Okay.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Anson. Very appreciate that you're sharing on education, especially that RMIT is also an education institution. Yeah, so there's probably something that we also learn from the industry. Now it's a time for Q&A. So I would share with the speaker some questions that you can share with us. Actually, I would start with Mr. Sơn right now because we just finished and then we have a question. So a question from, could you please suggest some idea for a university lecturer to keep ourselves value curating and marketable and integrate as part of the technology trends that you mentioned? So how that academic staff can adapt and can keep up with the technology that you highlight in your speech?
I think the role of lecturers is changed. The first one, you need to be a content creator. So you need to look at how you can change your textual lectures or vocal lectures to be a multimedia product. If you can create that product, is actually giving you an opportunities to reach our thousands of students, even outside of the university. I give you an example. I attend a course of a Columbia Business School, and the course is 4 weeks on. So every week I will attend 1 hour of his class, half as an MOOC and half as a discussion with him. I paid $300 for the course. We have 30,000 people attending his course. See how much money he got. Okay, so I think the first one, you need to be a producer. The second is you need to be a curator. There's a lot of content outside, and the student is in the sea of content, and you need to curate him to the content that most needed. And the third one, you need to work as a coach. Because you can save time from lecturing, then you have that time to be a coach to your student. So a producer, a content curator, and a coach. That's how you need to learn.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, thank you for that. So that's 3 advice to the lecturer. Also, how about the students with this ocean of new technology? What would be you suggest that the student have to adapt to cope with the technology changes?
We talking about learning by doing. So it's not just only learn the stuff, but actually create things. And I think the student need to have a belief in themselves that even when they were just student, they can create value by learning. So learning, apply the learning into your real life, trying to participate in project, in the incubator, in the enterprise club. I believe that RMIT offer on that opportunities. And look outside, work with people like George. It's not so much, it's not about the thing you learn, because actually the knowledge is abundant. You just need to learn how to use that knowledge into creating value or creating a product. I think So university will become incubator for such learning experience.
Yeah, excellent point. Yeah, and that also one of the key points that we talking about, how we create values from technology such as blockchain. It's not just about the technology or not about digital transformation, but it's about values, right? That what we can bring it back. Okay, thanks you. Thanks a lot for those answer. Now I have question for George. George, are you there?
Yep.
Yeah. So you talk about the blockchain in real estates, and just one question about any legal aspects to be addressed, when people using blockchain to start trading real estates.
No, trading real estate is not illegal, isn't it? Right. The only problem about cryptocurrency, I would say it's not called currency, but sometimes we call token, right? From the legal point of view, you are not allowed to supply token in Vietnam because it's not considered as a property. That is from the point of view company, some kind of how can I say that if you had a legal entity, right? If you do personal, no one can stop you from doing that. So there's a lot of things happen, every day, right? There are 30 billion Vien Dong is cashed out and buy through VNDC exchange, right? And for Bitcoin, it is so huge. I don't want to mention about that, right? And for the sum of the blockchain, again, I just want to emphasize again, blockchain is not cryptocurrency, right? So for the thing I mentioned in the application of blockchain in real estate, it's more about transparency. It's more about doing group investment. Sometimes you can consider low-cap token in low-cap blockchain cases like credit, a loyalty point. You don't need to consider it's the cryptocurrency because it's just like you need to measure how many % you're gonna own because you pay by your cash, right? So it's the number of the unit to measure how many % you are partially own the property. Yeah. And of course, if you are supply token with the legal entity, you are not allowed to.
Okay. One more question. So what do you think would be the major issues for consumer adoption of using blockchains in real estate transaction?
Right. So not only in real estate, but in order to be adopted in blockchain is a big barrier because like you need to know what is token. You need to know how it's going to be transferred among that network. And in order to be using low-cap application, you need to have your own wallet first, right? And for example, if you build your application on Ethereum, there will be a gas. Gas means the transaction fee. And a lot of people don't know that, right? They need to know that how much it's going to cost them and how they're going to transfer, how it's going to be authorized. So it is a big barrier. So that's why in many blockchain application, instead of doing that, they build a UI pretty much like normal application, and the private key will be kept by the organization, and they have the server or the security needed to keep it for the client. In case you want to get it, you get it out. Otherwise, they're gonna be on your behalf to do things that issued by you, and that's private key belong to you, but will be kept on their server. So they make things will be more easier for the user. The user just know that you just log in like normal application and you use that. And another thing I want to mention about this is can you hear me? Sorry.
Yep, sure.
So another thing is blockchain today, you cannot just purely go like online. That's the big barrier now. For example, for real estate, right? So the Mooncar application that we are about to launch, we just try to solve the problem of crypto investment and tokenization of real estate, so you can have the higher liquidity. Everything else needs to be going offline because, like in Vietnam, you cannot stay away from the legal. You need to go to notary to do those kind of notarization. You need to do all the paperwork. you need to pay tax like normal. So it's the O2O, online to offline. So we keep everything legal in the offline world, but then move the thing in the online world because it's help the liquidity and tokenization and quick investment on that.
All right, thanks a lot. And one person have asked about where can you find more information about 𝗵𝗂𝗃. So can you also just yes, provide with whether a contact number so people can actually.
Where can I type it? So I can type email and then you can just.
Yeah, you can put in the chat and we would post that information to the audience. I have another question from Sam Manai. Some university already started using blockchain technology in terms of student records, such as assessment, grading. Is that a new way to start a new full disruption? I actually can try to answer this question. So universities start to use blockchain. In terms of blockchain that you use in education, like university to store records, it's not really kind of changing the way how we do things. We're still doing, you still do the teaching and you still do the learnings. It's just the way that we manage the records, the information would be more in transparent ways, and it's more kind of easy to verify the information. And that would help, for example, anyone who want to check your transcript and your degrees, you can actually refer them to that blockchain that is established by your university, and they can actually verify that information. All you need to do is to give them a public key, which is linked to your ID. As I mentioned before, everyone have a identity online, and that's a private key and public key. And you can give to any institution who want to check your information, your public keys, and then they can go in and search for that public key. Then they can find information about you. So it's so that I think I would answer that questions. Another question I think would be to wrap up this session is we talk about blockchain. George, myself, and a bit of and Sơn mentioned about blockchain. So it looks like it's everything. Blockchain is a solution to so many things, isn't it? Is it a hype or is it have a real potential? And my answer is we really need to know about its strengths and its weaknesses. Blockchain also have some major right now disadvantages in terms of speed of processing. It's still slow compared with traditional database technology that handling transaction because of the way that how the blocks can be created in blockchain. So that blocks different platform will have different speed. In terms of distributed ledger, it sounds very interesting, very tempting, but also it lacks it's kind of responsibility. Even though we know that it's used as consensus, it's used the public, or the peer-to-peer, but when it comes to responsibility, some people would like to have someone actually, that you can point to and say who is actually handling one of this conflict and dispute. So that is also something that we need to concern, and especially now because blockchain is quite new and a lot of legal implication or legal systems are not there to handle those disputes, or even someone asked, is it legal to trade cryptocurrencies? And I just look up the recent law from Vietnam. We do not yet, the government have not yet kind of accepted a cryptocurrency trading or creation, like George said, in Vietnam yet. There's a sandbox that some organization can test, but not legally to the mass public. So that is something I can highlight. Okay, that due to the time limit as well, I really appreciate that all the speaker we have today, and Sơn and George have shared with us some insight about blockchain in real estate, technology in educations, and myself a bit about what is blockchain. That really can help you to get a better starting point on this, and maybe to know a bit more about why blockcoins, what is it, Bitcoin, right? It's famous for, but is it really something that you can spend the money without knowing how it works? And that is something you need to be more aware, more educated in that area. And yep, that's the end of our session. We will thank you for everyone for joining in today's session.
Bye bye, everybody.
Thanks
Thank
a lot.
you.
Bye bye.